Hi everyone. So today I want to talk about the Olympus OMD series cameras. In particular, the OMD Mark II series, the E-M10 Mark II, the E-M5 Mark II, and the E-M1 Mark II. The OMD Mark II series have been around a long time. The E-M5 Mark II was introduced back in 2015 along with the E-M10 Mark II, and then they were both released shortly thereafter. And then the E-M1 Mark II was introduced in late 2016 and then released shortly thereafter in 2017. And I've had the E-M10 Mark II since the middle of 2016, so almost 4 years now. And the E-M5 Mark II I just recently got because I got an amazing deal on it about 3 or 4 months ago. And then the E-M1 Mark II I've had for a couple of years. And I've used all of these cameras, at least these two here, extensively for my professional work, either here on my channel or, in my day job, like as a professional architectural photographer. And it was actually the E-M10 Mark II that got me into the Micro Four Thirds system. I had previously been shooting with a Nikon D750 for my architectural photography, and I bought this camera just simply as something to kind of carry around for hiking and camping and, just casual shooting. I never expected it to replace my Nikon D750, but after shooting with it for a while, I discovered the image quality was amazing, and the ergonomics and the customizability really improved my workflow as a professional photographer as well. So it didn't take long for me to find a lens that would help me in my professional work either, because the lens selection in this system is amazing. You can find lenses just about for any kind of genre of photography that you want to do, and a lot of them at a very affordable price. I mean, even the kit lens is an excellent lens and will give you excellent image quality, but for my professional work I needed something wider, so I got a 7-14. Now let me talk about the E-M10 Mark II, and then we'll move up to the E-M5 and the E-M1. What's kind of common among all the OMD cameras is in the E-M10 Mark II. We basically have like an all-metal build camera with excellent ergonomics and customizability. And of course, excellent image stabilization, terrific image quality, and then a ton of features like live composite, live bulb, live time, focus bracketing, exposure bracket. I mean, just about everything you could ever want or need and grow as a photographer, you can do with the E-M10 Mark II. And one of the things that really propelled this camera for me professionally was actually the one thing this camera has that the other two do not. Actually, there's two things. One is it has a pop-up flash. All right. Now, I don't use this for actually the primary lighting, but when I switched over from Nikon, I had a lot of Nikon flashes, the SB800s, and they have an optical trigger, and this little pop-up flash allowed me to control my Nikon flashes, so I didn't have to buy a bunch of new flashes with this system. And that helped me continue with my professional work with this camera. The other thing is that this one has the regular tilt screen for tilting up and down. We have a 90 degree and a 45. And that I found as a photographer is a little bit more or a little easier to use than, say, the flip around screen, because I'm usually on a tripod in my work and I have to mount the camera vertically sometimes and sometimes horizontally. But those are the two things that are kind of unique to the E-M10 Mark II over the other two cameras. Now moving up to the E-M5 Mark II, we still have the same excellent metal build quality and ergonomics, but this camera also adds weather sealing to the body. In addition to that, you usually buy this with the 14-150 kit lens, and the kit lens is also weather sealed. So you have a fully weather built system here, and I've heard stories of people taking this out in the toughest conditions and not having any problems at all. So this is a wonderfully durable weather sealed camera. Now in addition to that, the E-M5 Mark II switched over to a fully articulating screen, and this is really good for people that are more like hybrid shooters, right? They do video and they do photography at the same time. People like myself, this is really the better format or compromised for hybrid shooters. And to that end, they've also included a mic jack in this camera, and they've also improved the image stabilization over the E-M10 Mark II. So with the image stabilization, the mic jack, the fully articulating screen, and the small size and weight, this is really the perfect vlogging camera as well. But it really takes excellent pictures, because even though it uses the same 16 megapixel sensor from the E-M10, this camera has an additional mode called high-res shot mode. So you can put this onto a tripod, and I think you can get 40 or 50 megapixel JPEGs and then 70 or 80 megapixel RAWs. But the high-res shot mode really brings out some amazing detail in your images. It's just unbelievable. Now, some other things about this camera is they really added a lot of professional features. So for example, this camera, you can also do USB tethering to your laptop, which is really handy for studio work, like corporate photography, where a lot of times the clients like to see their pictures and then choose the best one, and you can show them right on your computer laptop. Also, you can get an additional vertical grip for this camera, which has a battery in it. So you can power this camera with 2 batteries, but the grip also includes a headphone jack and an AC line input, so that you can power this camera externally via an AC adapter. So that's also good, again, for studio work and for long-term photography, like time-lapse photography and things like that. So this camera will really grow with you as a professional photographer when you can add the grip, the battery grip, and external power supply, and the tethering and things like that. It also has a higher speed shutter, so you can go up to 1/8,000th of a second versus the E-M10 was 1/4,000th. And this camera also adds a few other small things, like you can do focus bracketing in both cameras, but this camera adds the additional ability to do focus stacking. Now you need a compatible lens, and the kit lens is not compatible with focus stacking, but if you add a compatible lens like a 12-40 Pro, you can stack the images in camera to get a final result of focus stacking. So that's really an amazing feature to do in camera. And a lot of times, you know, people in product photography do a lot of focus stacking, or if you do macro photography, you can do it all in camera with this, with the features built into this camera. The one thing that this camera does not have is the pop-up flash, and that I assume that's because of to keep the weather sealing, you know, strong, right? To improve the weather sealing. But they do include this little flash that you can attach to the top. And this is really a good little flash too. And what a lot of people don't know is that this flash is also weather sealed. So you can go out with a completely weather sealed flash, lens, and camera out into the field. And like I said, that's not a small thing to find in a sub $1,000 price. Because I bought this camera brand new with all this stuff for $700. So it's an amazing, amazing deal. And I would highly recommend this camera, if you can, over the E-M10 Mark II. Now let's talk about the E-M1 Mark II. Now this offers the same quality metal build, weather sealed body, together with the typical lens you get with this is the 12-40 Pro, which is also weather sealed. It's an f2.8, so it's very fast, and you have a really nice package. And this camera really ups the game in terms of professional features. So in addition to like the USB tethering, you also have dual card slots. You also have a very high capacity battery that will give you 2 or 3 times the battery life over the E-M5 and the E-M10. You have the same high-res shot mode, but you also have an improved image stabilization system. And this is where you can actually see a difference. This one is about a full stop more than the E-M5. Whereas between these two cameras and stills, you didn't see or feel a lot of difference. I mean, you still got excellent image stabilization. But with this camera, this is when you can start hand holding shots, you know, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I can typically hold about 3 or 4 seconds with this camera, but that's amazing. You know, this camera here, I can maybe get a half a second to, you know, a quarter second, but this camera, I can hold like 2-3 seconds, no problem, handheld, and still get a sharp image. They also upgraded the image sensor, so we now have 20 megapixels instead of 16 megapixels, and Another big improvement is this camera now has phase detect autofocus, and they've also recently updated the firmware for the continuous autofocus. So this has amazing continuous autofocus performance now. And in addition to these faster and better continuous autofocusing, this camera focuses a much lower light than either of these two cameras. I mean, these two cameras, you need just normal kind of light, and you can get a little dim, it's okay. But this camera, you know, it can be almost pitch black to the naked eye, and this thing will still lock focus somehow. I mean, not all the time, but yeah, it's amazing. I'm always impressed with the low light autofocusing capability of this. Another nice feature that they've included in this is something they call Pro Capture, where it'll capture in RAW up to 60 frames per second. And I think you can do 20 frames per second with continuous autofocus. And the Pro Capture also lets you pre-buffer some images, meaning it'll take 30 or 60 pictures when you half press the shutter button, and then when you fully press it, it'll start going at whatever rate you set it at. Now, some other professional features that they've added to this that you won't find on the E-M5 is this camera also has dual card slots. Which is, you know, sort of a mandatory thing nowadays that professionals want in their cameras. And, you know, you can also get the grip for it, which will allow you to run the camera on 2 batteries, which is basically all day shooting. And the grip also has the same AC adapter compatibility so that you can power the camera externally indefinitely. So again, for like studio work and things like that. They've also added 4K cinema 4K video at 24p up to 236 megabits per second. So it has a very high bit rate, high quality 4K video built in. So they've really upped the game on the video side as well. And like I said, this is the camera that I normally use to record my tutorials, and I do my live streaming with this. And honestly, I only use 1080p like 90% of the time. But when I've done 4K video with it, the image quality is amazing. Now, a couple of small things that I like about this camera is they've also added a feature in here called lens profiles, because I like to adapt lenses time to time, like my Nikon 50mm f1.4 or my original OM lenses like the 24 2.8. And you can program that lens information into the camera so that when it takes a picture, that lens information is saved in the EXIF data of the image. So that when you upload them into your image processing software, you'll know which lens you used when you adapt lenses to this. So that's just kind of a nice little thing, and it has a few other features that are really cool, but that's one that I like. And of course, this camera also comes with an external FML3 weather sealed flash, because of, you know, this one, it doesn't have a pop-up flash either. So that sums up the differences between these 3 cameras. And I think no matter which one you go with, you're going to get an excellent value for the money. Even today, in April of 2020, these cameras at these price points are still very competitive with any camera that's out there. With the build quality, the ergonomics, and the lens selection, you can really grow with this system as well. In any case, if you have any questions about any of these cameras, you know, I do live streams a couple times a week. You can always come on there, or you can go into my forums on robtrek.com. I'm always happy to help you as much as I can. And of course, I have a lot of tutorials here online on how to use these cameras. And I go into great details, so check those out as well. But either way, hopefully you found this video helpful, and thanks for watching.